Welcome to notebook number 3, Data Types and Missing Values. We'll begin by discussing the different types of data found within data frames and series. So each data frame column has a data type, and likewise each series has a data type. Now there are many different data types found and available in pandas, but these are the most common ones. So there are Booleans. These are only two possible values, true and false. Integer, these are whole numbers without decimals. Floats, these are numbers with decimals. The object data type is the most confusing and most peculiar one. So these are typically strings, but technically can contain any Python object. So more on this a little bit later. There are date times. These are specific date and times with nanosecond precision. Now, why is it important to know the data type of each column? Well, I think it's extremely important because if you know the data type of a column, then you are guaranteed to know the data type of each individual value in that column. So say you have a column that has the integer data type, that means every single value in that column will also be an integer. So it gives you some idea of what to expect in that column. Now this isn't true for this object data type, that's the only exception, and why this can cause confusion for some people. Now, like I said before, when you see the object data type, it is almost always going to be strings, but it could be other objects. There could be lists in there. It could be a mix of integers, floats, strings, date times, whatever. But for the most part, you're going to see strings there. Now, this was a major problem when Pandas was first released. So what they did do is there is a new string data type. This was a major enhancement to Pandas 1.0. It is still considered experimental, but this is a good move forward in Pandas, and eventually when we get to future versions of Pandas, we'll only use the string data type and not have to deal with this confusion of this object data type. All right, so moving on, there are different missing value representations in a Pandas data frame or series. There are two main ones. So when you see NaN, this stands for not a number, and NAT, this stands for not a time. You'll see the not a time inside of the date time columns. The not a number you'll see in the float columns. And unfortunately, this is also another limitation in Pandas and just a consequence of, when it was first built. There is no missing value representation for Booleans or integers. So if we look down here, Boolean and integer columns have no missing value representation. So if you have a Boolean column, then you're guaranteed to have no missing values in there. And likewise, if you have an integer column, then you also will not have any missing values in there. Now, this was also a problem that needed to be rectified and was dealt with in Pandas 1.0. There are new data types called the nullable integer and nullable Boolean. These are also experimental, and these are not the default data types. So if you read in a column from a file, like a CSV file, and it does contain Booleans but also missing values, then it'll convert it to another type such as float or object just so that it can actually read it in. So that's somewhat unfortunate, and more detail into data types will be covered further along in the book. So this is not the last discussion on data types. This is just an introduction to data types and missing values. There will be a very detailed discussion later on. So my recommendation for now is to avoid the new data types. And while they can work out well, the developers are still working out the kinks in them. They're also not the default data types. So whenever you read in a data frame, you will not get these new data and improved data types. You'll be stuck with the original data types. So until they have made the defaults maybe in Pandas 2.0, then I would probably just stick with the current older data types. One other thing that was introduced in Pandas 1.0 was that there was a new missing value representation. So this got rid of all the other missing value representations, NaN and NAT. There'll just be one going forward, and that makes a lot of sense to me. It is this is just a straight from the pd.na. That's how you find it. And again, this will be brought up again in that data types section. So this is also experimental, but does unify all the missing values into a single object. All right, so that's a brief introduction into the data types and missing values. We will go into and see them with actual data frames in the next video.